Oh, hello, MPS. Merry Christmas. Hello, Trixie. So, umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Video lang naman eh. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Bakit may sound? May echo. Umpisa na natin. Nangyayari itong computer ko. Nangyayari itong computer ko. Nangyayari itong yeah. Lang pintay ko na. Pintay ko na. Pintay ko na nga eh. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what the problem is. Ay, pinatay ko na nga eh. Kaya nga, pati volume, inalis ko na nga volume eh.
I-restart mo.
Restartin na nga. Kaya, inalis ko na nga volume eh. Restartin na nga. Kaya, saan sa problema itong computer na ito? Yun pala ang problema. Ay, nako.
So, anong problema?
Yung phone ko. I'm sorry. Hindi teki ang tatay eh.
We have just finished briefings, first in San Fernando and then now here, on the situation from the floods that were brought about, well, mostly by Egay but also Falcon. At tinignan namin kung anong sitwasyon, talagang malaki masyado ang tubig. Lumalabas talaga yung mga nagiging effect ng climate change. Kaya natin pag-aralan at maunawaan kung ano yung maaari nating gawin. Dahil mahirap labanan yung weather, kailangan mag-adjust tayo lahat. And we have to do many things. But marami kami mga strategies, mabuti naman at mukha naman nagkakaunawaan both at the local level at saka sa national level tungkol sa mga maaring gawin na proyekto para hindi na sana maulit ito kung maitapos natin yung mga proposal na gano'n.
Magandang umaga po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Magandang umaga.
Yun pong pagbaha namin dito po sa Bulacan, dekada na po ang binilang. Ano po. Sa inyo pong panahon, ano po yung long-term plan para po maibsan po yung problema ng pagbaha dito po sa aming probinsya ng Bulacan at karating kalawigan po ng Pampanga at Bataan. Thank you.
Yung matagal nang pinaplano na maglalagay ng mga impounding project na maglalagay ng kung saan iipon yung tubig para hindi na bumaba sa ilog at hindi mapuno yung ilog kagaya ng nangyayari ngayon. So yun ang long term na kailangan gawin. Hindi lang ito'y matagal ng plano ito, hindi lang talaga na implement pa. Pero sisimulaan na namin na ganun ang pinakasimpleng solusyon diyan ay makapaglagay nga ng maggagawa tayo ng mga pond na hindi, large scale na ang pinag-uusapan, hindi na yung maliliit. Hindi na sweep 5-10 hectares yung sweep. Ito times 10 siguro hanggang 200 hectares na malaki. Para pag-ipunan ng tubig hindi nabababa at bukod pa doon ay magagamit natin for irrigation, freshwater supply, kung ano man ang pangangailangan natin sa tubig. So ito ay buong plano, ito ay kasunod sa ating mga bagong pag-iisip na ang flood control ay hindi lamang flood control na. Ang flood control ay kasama dyan ang irrigation, sa supply ng irrigation na tubig para sa irrigation, at kung minsan, kung medyo mataas ang pinanggalingan ng tubig, baka pwedeng lagyan ng power. Kaya marami tayong mga iniisip na strategy para mabigyan naman, matugunan naman natin itong paulit-ulit na problemang ito.
Thank you, sir. Melanie Valdos, Radyo Pilipinas.
Hi, sir. Ano po ang gagawin nating solusyon sa NLEX sa Pampanga? Meron po yung papataasin ng tulay sa NLEX San Simon at water impounding area po sa Candaba.
Marami dito na-discuss natin kahapon.
yung water impounding ay yung matagal ng plano rin yan na dadalhin yung tubig sa Candaba Swamp. Hindi naman sa buong, hindi naman ilulubog yung buong Candaba Swamp, kundi doon lang sa maghahanap lang ng isang area doon kung saan na pwedeng ilagay. Yung sa NLEX, ang naging problema sa NLEX, hindi yung NLEX ang nagka-problema, kundi nagkatubig talaga. Hindi naman nasira yung NLEX. Kaya ang gagawin, ang naging measurement ay tumaas ang tubig ng 0.7 meters, 700 centimeters. 0.7 meters na tumaas.
Tama,
Kaya
Sir
itataas na
Amit.
ngayon yung tulay na yon, yung NLEX, ng 0.7 meters plus 4.5 meters para hindi na talaga maabot. So bali lahat-lahat 5.2 meters ang itataas doon sa section na yun ng NLEX.
Sir, thank you. Si Left Narciso of DZRH.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Parang kapareho lang din po nung tanong nila kasi Governor Fernando pushes for construction of a mega dike to solve the flooding problem. Pero sabi nyo nga po, matagal na rin itong mga plano. Ano na lang po yung commitment ninyo na under your administration, finally ay magagawa or masisimulan itong mga pagtatayo nito?
Well, one of the first steps na ginawa natin dyan ay nagtayo tayo, naglagay tayo ng Office of Water Resources Management is the complete title, which is under the Office of the President. At yan ay nasa ilalim niyan ang management ng lahat ng tubig natin. Tubig natin na iinumin natin, tubig na pang-irigasyon, tubig para sa iba't ibang bagay, lahat ma-manage na para hindi na masyadong dahil nagbago talaga lahat. Isa sa pinakamahirap na ipaliwanag dahil napakahirap, napakasakit pakinggan ay ito na, ganito na talaga ito. Hindi tayo babalik dahil sa climate change. Hindi na talaga tayo babalik sa dati. Yung mga inaasahan natin, mga wet season, dry season, mukhang hindi na masyadong applicable yan ngayon dahil nga sa climate.
Yan ang hindi maintindihan ng congresswoman eh. Siya nga pa, batiin ko muna kayo. Jamila Ferrer, bago ka, binigyan na kita ng jacket. So si Trixie Asurwa, siya prati ang nanguna sa pasensya ka na kayo kanina. Nagwalang hiya itong mga gadgets ko eh. So, I'm sorry for the loud echo. Yung pala, yung phone ko ang may sala. Mabuti, alam ni Sir Amik. Okay. You're from Middle East, Jamila. Welcome to this family channel. Family channel po dito kasi lahat dito magagalang. Din natin ni Ryan Blackwell, si Amik TV, mega love shoutout po. Binati din ni Ryan, si Hamila. And then si Detective William, binata si Amik, TV45. Tama si Pbbm. Tama talaga siya. Si Ben, kahit dito naging rainy season sa instead summer. Nagbago na nga. Oh, I'm so glad. So, I'm so glad. I'm happy today. Johanna is here. Hello, Johanna. I miss you a lot. Oh. Welcome back. Hello, classmates. Sabi ni Junior. Good day, evening to all. si Ryan, binati si Joanna, and then si Junior. Okay. Wala nang ibang fan. That's ipagpatuloy na natin yung the video. Tinapos ko lang yung fan. Greetings.
Climate change. Tignan na lang natin.
Hi,
Sa
Rebecca.
ngayon, ngayong araw na ito, tayo ay technically nasa ilalim, we are in El Nino. Pero tignan nyo naman yung ulan, tignan nyo yung baha. Kaya talagang hindi na natin ma-predict, hindi natin ma-forecast ang weather. Kaya paghandaan na natin. And that's what the Management Office of Water Resources Management is about. Bukod pa doon ay yung nagtayo kami ng office na ganon.
Masasabay ko lang, in fairness, nung election po, nagsabi si Manny Pacquiao na may mag-i-establish siya ng Department of Water. Ipinagtawanan siya ng karamihan ng vlogger. Maganda pala yung plano ni Manny Pacquiao. In fairness to Manny Pacquiao, Department of Water, nare-recall niyo yun? Si Presidente Marcos ay inadapt yung idea ni Manny Pacquiao. Credit to Manny Pacquiao. Yung iba, hindi binibigyan ng credit to si Manny Pacquiao na when he's going to be president, mag-establish siya ng Department of Water. Maski ako, natawa eh. No, I apologize to Manny Pacquiao for laughing at him because that idea seems laughable at that time. Pero yun pala, maganda pala. Kita nyo, umaamoy ng pagkakamali ang host ninyo. Kayo, di ba nyo siya pinagtawanan ng he was planning to establish the Department of Water, si Manny Pacquiao?
Dahil kailangan ng pag-isipan, magplano at gumawa ng mga pag-aaral tungkol dito sa water management. Ngunit ang talagang inaantay namin ay magkaroon ng Department of Water
Ayan.
Resources Management na hindi pa na isa sa batas pero naka-file na sa Senado at
si Manny
sa
Pacquiao,
House na itatayo yung Department of Water Resources Management. Yun ang mamamahala dyan sa lahat ng mga impounding project na ating pinag-usapan. Lahat ng water, hindi lamang yung mga impounding, pero lahat ng magbabago tayo, marami tayong babaguhin. Hindi na tayo dapat kukuha ng tubig sa balon. Dapat kumukuha tayo ng tubig sa ilog. Dapat pag umuulan, kinukolekta natin yung tubig. Dahil hindi naman tuyo ang Pilipinas eh. Pero nagtutuyot tayo dahil hindi tayo nag-iipon ng tubig. Kaya diyan kailangan matuto na tayo. At ganyan ang problema na hinaharap natin dito nga sa climate change.
Thank you, sir. Last question from Ivan Merina, GMA 7.
Ano po ang magiging tugon ng pamahalaan sa pinakahuling insidente kung saan ang isang Chinese Coast Guard vessel ay binomba po ng tubig at pinigilan ang resupply mission sa Ayungin Shoal?
Well, the usual ang ating Secretary Foreign Affairs ay pinuntahan si Ambassador Huang ngayong araw at nagdala ng isa pang note verbal kasama na ang mga picture, mga video kung ano mga pangyayari at titignan natin kung ano yung kanilang magiging sagot. Ngunit sa atin ay actually today pagkatapos ng change of command ng CGPA ay magkakaroon kami ng command conference tungkol nga dito on how we will respond. But as you can imagine, ayokong pag-usapan ang operational aspects niyan. But we continue to...
Bakit ayaw niyang pag-usapan? Kasi it's a military strategy. Confidential po yan. Kung didiscuss siya in front of the public, yung mga plano niya ay hindi na magiging effective.
To assert our sovereignty. We continue to assert our territorial rights in the face of all of these challenges, and consistent with the international law and UNCLOS especially. So that is always been our stand, and that will, but we still have to keep communicating with the Chinese government, with President Xi, with Beijing. We still have to keep communicating with them because we need to really come to a conclusion. Ang nagiging ang siyempre position ng China, sinasabi nila kaming may-ari nito eh. Kaya pinagtatanggol namin. Tayo naman sinasabi hindi, kami ang may-ari nito. Kaya ipinagtatanggol namin. Kaya yun ang nagiging gray area ngayon na pinag-uusap.
Dahil dyan sa statement ni President Marcos na yung meron daw gray area, binanatan siya ni Justice Antonio Carpio na wala daw gray area. Basta mayroon lang makita maliit na butas, yung mga nasa kabilang panig, ay hahanap. Totoo naman sinasabi ng ating presidente kasi hindi nire-recognize ng China ang arbitral ruling ng Hague. So, tama po yung sabi ni President Marcos, mayroong gray area as far as the Chinese are concerned. Pag mo naman banatan Antonio Carpio just to get political points. Because nung sinabi niya, we have always maintained that we assert our rights tungkol sa teritoryo natin. Balikan natin yung pagkasabi niya.
We still have to keep communicating with the Chinese government of all of these challenges, and consistent with the international law, and we continue
to
assert our sovereignty. We continue to assert our territorial rights in the.
So that is not considered na malabo ang statement po ni Presidente Marcos, because he has said that we assert our rights. Kaso, he's talking about yung Chinese side who also don't recognize our claim to the West Philippine Sea, our exclusive economic zone. So, the President Bongbong Marcos is just being frank. Ngayon, yung sila Justice Antonio Carpio saka yung mga kabilang panig, ay dahil dyan, pinanapan na ng butas si Presidente Marcos. Mahutay po sa diplomasya si President Marcos. So, ginagamit nila yung word na gray area na parang malabo ang pananaw ni Presidente Marcos sa claim natin. Puputulin natin.
The face of all of these challenges, and consistent with the international law and UNCLOS especially. So that is always been our stand, and that will, but we still have to keep communicating with the Chinese government, with President Xi, with Beijing. We still have to keep communicating with them.
Kaya ganyan, kaya he's very careful kasi he does not want to use inflammatory words that will exacerbate the current tense situations sa West Philippine Sea. Ganyan ang diplomasya. Mahinahon po. Mahinahon po siya. Hindi siya padalos-dalos. Nakatulad ni Antonio Carpio. Kung Kung sila Antonio Carpio ang namamahala, baka nakagera na. Because ah, hindi sila nag-iisip ng mabuti. Padalos-dalos ang kanilang desisyon. Mabuti nga, si Presidente BBM ang naging presidente natin.
Because we need to really come to a conclusion. Ang nagiging, siyempre, position ng China, sinasabi nila kaming may-ari nito eh. Kaya,
yan sinasabi niya. When he's talking of the gray area, it's talking about the insistence of China that the West Philippine Sea, which they call the South China Sea, all the territory there belongs to them. That is the gray area part, because it is being contested. Our rights are being contested by the Chinese government. There's no unclear message from the president. He has always asserted that the West Philippine Sea is within our exclusive economic zone. Itong nasa ibang panig, hinahanapan lang ng butas ang ating magaling na presidente.
pinagtatanggol namin. Tayo naman sinasabi, hindi. Kami ang may-ari nito. Kaya ipinagtatanggol namin. Kaya yun ang nagiging gray area ngayon na pinag-uusapan.
Di ba sabi ko, he's stating a fact that is readily acknowledged by most diplomats that the Chinese are claiming that the South China Sea belongs to them. He's just stating the fact. Na magbubulag-bulagon siya, o magsisinungaling siya sa Pilipinas na walang claim po ang China, wala silang pakialam, hindi na ini-state ng China na kanila yun. He's just stating the fact. Para also to caution all those mga belligerent persons na medyo mahinaon kayo. Kailangan lines of communication. Sabi nga ni Sir Ramic, don't burn the bridges. I will read the comment of Sir Ramic later on.
Kaya kailangan natin, buti na lang, wala namang nasaktan, walang injury, ngunit magkukulang ang resupply na dinala sa Sierra Madre ngayon. Kaya kailangan natin isipin what we will do next. Yeah.
Mr. President, pwede ko na rin pong isunod yung tanong kung ano ho ang inireport sa inyo ni dating Pangulong Duterte tungkol sa naging pag-uusap.
Yan. Tinanong, nasa research ko yan. Mababasa nyo yan. Kaya nga, importanteng basahin nyo yung mga notes ko diyan sa umpisa. Nasa notes ko lahat yan. Babasahin natin ulit pagkatapos ng all the press conferences, makikita nyo. Mababalikan nyo in case you miss something. Kaya ko ginagawang lahat ng research ko ay pinapakita ko sa inyo para malaman nyo, this is a truly credible channel. Hindi po opinion lang po, shooting from the hip. Wala kang pinanghahawakan. Parating dito sa channel kong ito, may pinanghahawakan po tayo na kung makikipag-argue po tayo.
Nila ni President Xi. At bakit po naulit ang ganitong insidente?
I don't think it's related. I don't think this is related to his visit. Wala naman. We just pinag-usapan lang kung ano yung pinag-usapan nila. Nagkwentuhan sila. Of course, there are other things na napag-usapan which I think need to remain confidential. That's between President Digong and myself. So again, these are operational aspects of our military, of our Navy, of our Coast Guard. Kaya mahirap masyadong pag-usapan. So
operational na yun, ha?
All right.
Thank you,
Sige,
Mr.
maraming
President. Thank you,
salamat.
So, basahin natin yung sabi ni Sir. I miss you more po, Tatay Jack, for being always cost time zone natin. Oh, I understand. Joanna, I'm glad you're back to law. I'm so glad. Yeah, because you've been one of my favorites sa channel na ito. Rebecca Lagmay, how are you? Rebecca Lagmay, greets Trixie Villa. Kap Amik, binabati ka ni Joanna Wilfred. I still find it hard to pronounce your name, Twillier. Okay. Marami nang bago rito, Joanna. Bagong subscribers, bagong nanonood. Maria Cristina Chris is greeting Joanna Wilfred and Rebecca Lagmay. Rebecca Lagmay is greeting also Chris. Joanna Wilfred is greeting Maria Cristina Chris. Maria Cristina, hi, mega love shout out. Okay, ang comment ni Sir Amik, yung budget ng flood control fund instead na sa Congress sa water management nailagay kasi for longest time almost 200 billion appropriation for GAA for flood control, hindi nakikita ang implementation. Kaya nga pinapaimbestikahan, tama ka dyan. Maybe that's a good idea, Sir Amik. Kaya lang pinapaimbestikahan na, pinapa-investigahan na ni President Bongbong Marcos yung mga questionable projects by contractors who did not come up with the expected results from the projects they constructed. Kaya malamang sabi niya, iniisip na siguro, nagkakaroon ng corruption. He is not going to tolerate it. Tama po. Stubbornly sila. Yeah, you're right. Madiplomasya ang ating presidente. You can see from the manner he speaks that he's not padalos-dalos. Hindi katulad nila Risa Hontiveros, yung mga senador na maepal, iniisip niya mabuti kung ano ang dapat na gawin na hindi ikakasira ng ating bansa na magbibenepisyo ang ating mga kababayan. Ganyan ang presidente. Good evening, Tatay hand pink waving, sabi niya. They have the same character, China and Russia. Yeah, Russia, they don't care. Communist nga. Yeah, you're right. Kaya hindi masyadong dapat pagkatiwalaan yung mga yan. Okay. So, related po yun, yung confidential na pinagpulungan ni Presidente sa kanyang mga commanders. Kaya tignan natin ang kanyang pagsasalita sa change of the command of the Philippine Army. Kasi yung dating commander ng Philippine Army, si General Bronner, ay na-promote as Chief of Staff yata. Very short lang po ito. Mapapakinggan nyo rito yung utos niya ang advice niya at utos sa Philippine Army. Hindi ko na i-present yung seremonya. Ang importante lang naman sa ating mga kapamilya ng Tatay Jackferdz is marinig kung ano ang sinasabi ng presidente. Kaya yung mga seremonyang mga palakad-lakad na kung di siya magsasalita, ay hindi ko na i-presenta yun. It's a waste of time. Ay,
lahat na natipon ngayon
of a multi-stakeholder whole of the nation. Sums up my life to the Filipino people. Friends, to the approved appointment. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of our Republic and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand R. Marcos, Jr.
Thank you to our D&D Secretary, Secretary Gilbert Teodoro. Please take your seats. The Special Assistant to the President, Secretary Anton Lagdameo, other members of the Cabinet here present, our incoming AFP Chief of Staff, General Romeo S. Browner Jr.,
yeah.
the immediate past AFP Chief of Staff, General Andy Centino, my fellow workers in government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am very happy to be with you here, to join you, to preside over the Armed Forces of the Philippines change of command and retirement ceremony for General Andy Centino. I congratulate him for successfully completing his tour of duty as Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces. You have demonstrated exemplary service and resolute commitment to our nation's peace, order, and security. Under your supervision, the AFP has made significant strides in reducing the presence and capabilities of communist and local terrorist groups. In terms of our national security, the AFP has conducted hundreds of maritime air patrols, naval surface patrols, as well as deployed hundreds of troops to defend our islands. The AFP also established dozens of littoral monitoring stations and detachments across the country. With regard to our peace support operations, the AFP has facilitated the deployment of military observers to United Nations peacekeeping operations in India and Pakistan, to the UN mission in South Sudan, and to the UN stabilization mission in the Central African Republic. I thus convey my utmost respect and gratitude to General Centino. As you enter your well-deserved retirement, I hope that you will continue to pursue endeavors that will benefit our fellow Filipinos and our entire nation. We have made sure that we do not lose the talent and the skills and the experience that General Andy has acquired over his many years, his 39 years of service.
39
so
years
we
pala.
have assigned him as the presidential assistant, as presidential advisor on the West Philippine Sea, so that we can be sure that our
appointed
policies for
siyang
that,
advisor.
all our policies in that regard are continuously evolving from what we had begun. Now, looking to the future, let us welcome the incoming Chief of Staff of the AFP, Lieutenant General, hindi na Lieutenant General, Romeo S. Browner Jr., given your extensive experience in safeguarding peace in conflict-affected areas, I urge you to recalibrate our internal security operations so that we can deliver public services in geographically isolated and disadvantaged communities. I know that your supervision will give rise to a safer and more secure nation, where more rebels return to the fold of the law and decide to be productive citizens. At this juncture, allow me to urge you all to work towards an armed forces that is agile and prepared for any contingency. As your Commander-in-Chief,
Yung advice niya. Kasi mayroon tayong mga problemang hinaharap tulad ng China, tulad ng communist insurgency. Kaya yan ang advice niya. They must be agile, and prepared for any contingency. Okay.
I assure you that this administration is firm in reinforcing this noble pursuit by modernizing the AFP. Along with our efforts to strengthen our external defense capabilities, I ask you to continue working with national government agencies and civilian stakeholders to form an archipelagic consciousness amongst Filipinos. This will help champion our country's territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Binanggit na naman niya ang territorial integrity and sovereignty. So malinaw niyo ang message ni President Bongbong Marcos. He is not willing, he is not going to give up an inch of our territory. He intends to maintain the integrity of the Philippine territory. So, but maingat po siya. He is not ready to be warlike in his approach to the solution of the dispute between China and the Philippines. Unti-unti niyang pinararating kay President Xi ang kanyang gagawin. Kaya nga, napansin niyo mayroon ng proposed joint patrol between US and the Philippines sa West Philippine Sea. Darating din tayo dyan. Kaya wag kang madali dyan, Antonio Carpio. Wag mong sabihin na hindi clear ang message ng presidente natin. It's very clear in almost all of his speeches na ina-assert niya ang ating right to our exclusive economic zone.
I have faith that under the supervision of General Browner, the armed forces will continue to ensure the security of Filipinos and the national sovereignty of our country amidst the challenges ahead.
Yung challenges. Ano yung challenges niya? Yung China. Yung sovereignty, our integrity, our territorial integrity. Malinaw po yan.
So together, let us protect the interests of our people. Let us help them fulfill their goals for themselves, for their families, for their communities, and for our nation. Mabuhay ang sandatahang lakas ng Pilipinas. Maraming salamat sa inyo.
Once again,
basat po tayo. Basta muna tayo ng messages. Si Mary Cristina, hello. Cutie Connie. Si John Wilfred, hello. Trixie Villa, good day, sabi niya. Si Trixie Villa, binati rin sila John Wilfred at saka si Cutie Connie. And then si Rosalie Greenblatt, yung magaling na kumanta. Wala ka bang trabaho ngayon, Rosalie? Pakisuportahan nyo lang po si Rosalie, please. Yung mga hindi pa nakadikit sa kanya, dikitan nyo siya. Cutie Connie, dumikit ka. Saka kay Rosalie Greenblatt. Okay. I'm sure si Sir Amik matagal na nakadikit kay Rosalie. Kilala niyo yan eh. Si Rosalie said, mega love shout out. Magkakilala na itong dalawa, si Sir Amik at si Rosalie. Kasi pareho sila mahilig kumanta. They share the same passion, the love of music. Sabi ni Rosalie Greenblatt, hello, Sir Amit, sabi. Then, si Rosalie ginit po lahat. Hello to all. Again, ang panawagan ko po, yung mga hindi pa nakakapag subscribe kay Rosalie sa The Current Views, sandali lang po naman mag-subscribe. Stay there for about 2 minutes and then you can come back to the live show. Okay. Ito mababa po ng konti. Ito yung respond ng Philippine Coast Guard at saka Philippine Navy tungkol doon po sa insidente sa West Philippine Sea. So, para malaman natin ang actual na sitwasyon, kaya ko pinipresent po ang dinyong ito.
Joined this afternoon by the spokesperson of key member agencies of the task force, Assistant Director General of the National Security Council, ADG Jonathan Malaya, who is at the center, Colonel Medel Aguilar of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, to my immediate right, and Commodore J.R. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard. The reason for this joint press briefing is quite obvious. There has been a serious incident in the West Philippine Sea, and this is the opportunity for us to present the Philippine narrative of that incident, Sun's Height. In the interest of time, we've agreed to organize ourselves as follows. The first to make a presentation will come from the National Security Council, and he will give a general overview of the incident of August 5. He will be followed by the Armed Forces of the Philippines that will speak about the August 5, 2022 human shoal incident from the AFP perspective. Then the Philippine Coast Guard will then present its Coast Guard perspective of the incident. Following this presentation, the DFA will then present its statement on the incident. After the presentation, we will be having an open forum, and after that, after we've concluded most of the questions, I will also then turn the floor to the National Security Council to do the closing remarks. So in the interest of time, can I give the floor to ADG Malaya, who will then speak on what has happened in terms of the incident of August 5. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And at the onset, allow me please to thank the Department of Foreign Affairs for hosting the National Task Force West Philippine Sea today here at the Department of Foreign Affairs for a joint press briefing. Salamat po, DFA. The National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, led by National Security Advisor Eduardo Llamaño, strongly condemns the aggressive, dangerous, and unlawful actions by the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese maritime militia vessels against Philippine chartered supply boats and Philippine Coast Guard vessels who were undertaking a regular rotation and resupply mission in Ayungin Shoal last Saturday, August 5, 2023.
So, yung mga vessels natin are conducting a resupply mission para kasi magugutom at mauuhaw yung mga tao doon. Yung mga may sakit, kailangan nila ng gamot. Normal po yung ginagawa ng Navy at saka Coast Guard. At saka walang unlimited ang vessel ng ating Coast Guard at Philippine Navy kumpara doon sa mga vessels ng Chinese. So, they are not a threat at all. For humanitarian purposes lang, bakit let's forget about the dispute. Ang mission ng mga vessels ng Navy at Coast Guard is to resupply yung BRP Sierra Madre. Hindi po panggera yung yung dahilan nila para magpunta dun sa Sierra Madre. Kaya it's unwarranted po yung action na water cannon ng China.
The Philippine vessels were subjected to
Ay,
repeated
Bogs.
water cannoning and continuous dangerous maneuvers by CCG and CMB vessels, placing the lives of the crew of the Philippine vessels at risk in violation of humanitarian and international law. We wish to underscore that the Philippine vessels were undertaking regular and lawful activities in support
Hello,
of
President.
PRP Sierra Madre, LS-57, a commissioned Philippine Navy vessel permanently stationed in Ayungin Shoal, which is well within our continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. Because of the dangerous and unlawful tactics employed by the CCG and CNM vessels acting in concert, the second Philippine supply boat failed to bring in much needed food, water, supplies, and other provisions to the Philippine troops.
Ang nangyari, isa lang tuloy, good morning po, President Fontelo. It was a nice discussion kahapon. So, I'm glad we discussed the matter kahapon. So, kagigising mo lang? Kasi it's only morning here in California. Okay. So, dalawa po ang ships yun. Dahil sa panghaharang, ang pambobomba ng China ng water sa mga vehicles, ay hindi po nakalusot yung dalawa. Yung isa lang ang nakalusot. So, ang nangyari, short po ang supply ng mga sundalo doon sa BRP Sierra Madre. Na-recognize din na problem niya ni Presidente Marcos. Kaya nagkaroon siya ng command conference po para magkaroon ng proper response na hindi warlike response doon sa nangyari.
Station in Ayungin Shoal. At one point, a CCG vessel blocked the way of a PCG vessel within 20 yards, a maneuver that could have resulted in a collision that was only abated by the skill and quick thinking of our Coast Guard officers. And later on, Commodore Dariela will give us more details about that specific incident. The dangerous and illegal tactics employed, which are evidenced by photos, videos, and other official reports, are a clear and unmistakable violation of domestic laws, the Convention on the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and the 2016 Arbitral Award, which recognizes the Philippines' rights in the West Philippine Sea. The Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese militia vessels have no right whatsoever to place a blockade or impede or otherwise control the movement of the Philippines Coast Guard and Philippine supply boats in Ayungin Shoal or anywhere else in the West Philippine Sea.
Malinaw na, walang right po ang mga Chinese para mag-impede o harang, ang ibig sabihin ng impede, harangin po ang mga supply missions ng mga Navy-based vessels natin. So malinaw po ang stand ng Pilipinas tungkol sa West Philippine Sea.
Especially when they are undertaking a mission to resupply our troops stationed there. While one Philippine supply boat was blocked by Chinese vessels from reaching the shoal, another Philippine supply boat was able to break the blockade and successfully delivered much-needed supplies and provisions to BRP Sierra Madre. The National Task Force West Philippine Sea commend the valiant men and women of the AFP Western Command, the Philippine Navy.
So, in spite of the dangers, in spite of the intimidation by the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese militia vessels, nakalusot dahil sa daring at sa gallantry ng isang Navy vessels na makalusot doon sa blockade. Hindi nila intindi ang kanilang safety. Nakalusot pa rin sila.
The Philippine Coast Guard, for their daring, bravery, and commitment to duty, despite all odds and despite the continuous Chinese bullying, harassment, and intimidation. We demand that the government of the People's Republic of China immediately cease and desist all its coercive, unlawful, and unacceptable activities in the West Philippine Sea. Guided by the directive of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in his second State of the Nation address, the Philippine government will continue to uphold its sovereign rights and preserve our nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and join him in assuring the Filipino people that this government will not lose any inch of our territory. We will never waver in our determination to resupply our troops stationed in Ayungin Shoal and in other Philippine-occupied features. Under the leadership of President Marcos, we will uphold the implementation of the 2016 Arbitral Award in relation to our rights in the West Philippine Sea in defense of a rules-based international.
Anong sinasabi mo, Antonio Carpo, na hindi malinaw ang posisyon ni PBBM? Malinaw yan. Pati yung mga sundalo, alam ang tinutukoy ni PBBM tungkol sa West Philippine Sea. Ikaw lang gumagawa ng issue.
Order. Our position is clear. The award is final and indisputable, and we firmly reject attempts to undermine.
Sa din itong area.
We will always pursue constant dialogue and diplomatic approaches with other claimants towards the resolution of any issue that might arise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ADG Malaya. I now give the floor to Colonel Medal, our spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Colonel Medal.
Thank you, ma'am. I will speak on behalf of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And the focus of my presentation will be on the rotation and reprovisioning mission of the Armed Forces of the Philippines involving our naval unit and of course the PRP Sierra Madre. Initially scheduled on July 31 this year, the AFP's Western Command on August 4 proceeded with its rotation and reprovisioning missions to our troops at PRP Sierra Madre, in the vicinity of Ayungin Shoal.
Hindi galing sa akin yung echo, ha?
An integral part of the Philippines as well as within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, and over which the Philippines has sovereign rights and jurisdiction. At around 5:25 a.m. on that day, UNISA May 1 and UNISA May 2 departed Naval Detachment Postal Grade here in Barangay Mahili, Puerto Princesa City for the said mission. This mission was actually delayed already because it was executed immediately after the two typhoons that brought bad weather to the country. I'm referring to Egay and Falcon. As the preparations were going on, coordinations was made with the Philippine Coast Guard district in Palawan for the said mission. While the Rory mission belongs to the Philippine Navy, the task of escorting and rendering assistance to the supply boats within the country's territorial waters and EEZ were the task given for the PCD to perform. Two multi-role response vessels, BRP Cabra and BRP Malapido, were then tasked to conduct maritime patrols and provide security assistance to the RORE mission. As shown on the screen is the route of the RORE mission. And you can imagine the distance between mainland Palawan, and this will tell us that the mission is within the territorial waters extending to the area covered by under exclusive economic zone. The RORE mission initially reported the presence of Chinese Coast Guard vessel at the vicinity of south of Sikatuna Shoal at 8 p.m. of that same day. But this time, the Chinese Coast Guard advanced closer to our country. It's around 90 plus nautical miles from Palawan. In previous RORE mission, they started shadowing our mission at the Skoda Shore. So that's where and when the shadowing began and continued as they reached the vicinity of the Skoda Shore at 6 a.m. the following day. And until they were at the vicinity 6.6 nautical miles east of the north entrance to the Ayungin Shore at around 9 a.m. Minutes later, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel 5304, Black UM2 for
Nandyan na nagsimula.
It was there where another China Coast Guard vessel 5201 issued a challenge and instructed the vessel or the supply boat UM2 to stop, but the latter responded with a statement. This is a resupply boat tasked by the Philippine government to bring provisions to the troops stationed in the Sierra Madre.
Oh, malinaw yan. If only for the Chinese to know that this is not warlike. It's just a resupply mission. So they have no right to even water cannon the vehicles. Pinaalam na pala na hindi ito resupply mission lang ito. Bakit mo bubumbahin ng water cannon yung vessel ng Philippine Navy?
Knowing the legality, legitimacy, and importance of the RORE mission, UM2 or UNISA-ME 2 defied the unauthorized challenge and instruction of the China Coast Guard. And assisted by the Philippine Coast Guard's BRP Malabrigo, UNISA-ME 1 made it to the BRP Sierra Madre despite of several attempts to block its way. What will be shown now in the video are actual footages taken by the crew of UNISA 1, May 2.
Kaya makikita niyo yung blow by blow. Oh? Oh, laki ng ship nila. Tayo, ang liit. Tingnan mo.
The first video will tell us how dangerously close China Coast Guard vessel to a smaller boat such as the UNISA-ME 2. The wave generated caused by its size may bring unexpected result.
Yung baka makapsize yung boat.
That would harm the life of our children.
Oh, ang close lang.
Next video. The next video will also show to you how they tried to surround UNISA May 2 to prevent it from accomplishing its mission. On each side are two militia vessels, and of course, supported by a China Coast Guard vessel. This in effect restricted the movement of UM2. And again, because of the situation, again, it endangered the life of our people. Next video, please.
Kini ang lapit.
The next video will show to us how the water cannoning happened. There are actually two videos showing that what the China Coast Guard did to our people. And the last video. And the last video. Anyway, I will allow our friend here from the Philippine Coast Guard to narrate to you the details of the events leading to the critical moments which will show the professionalism, restraint, and discipline of our people amidst the dangerous maneuvers, water cannoning, and other unlawful acts that the China Coast Guard committed to undermine the RORE mission. We also have deployed Philippine Navy vessels at the area to provide assistance, but they too were shadowed by People's Liberation Army Navy vessels in that area. Aboard the two resupply boats are Philippine Navy personnel for deployment to the BRP Sierra Madre as part of the rotation scheme, and more or less 17 tons of assorted cargoes composed of food, water, and other supplies for the troops' reprovisioning. Unfortunately, only half of the provisions were unloaded to the BRP Sierra Madre because only one resupply boat, the UM1, was able to reach the BRP Sierra Madre at 11:30 a.m. on August 5, 2023. The other resupply boat, the UM2, and its accompanying Philippine Coast Guard vessel, the MRRB 4409, were blocked and were forced to leave the area by the China Coast Guard and militia. The two supply boats arrived safely at the NDOB Pier, Barangay Bahili, Puerto Princesa City at 6:50 p.m. yesterday. They accomplished their mission, albeit partially, but we're lucky that no one was hurt in the incident. BRP Sierra Madre is a commissioned vessel of the Philippine Navy. It is therefore the Navy's responsibility to man it and maintain it for the safety of our troops deployed there. The RORE, as recognized by many countries, is a legal operation being conducted by the armed forces of the Philippines through the Philippine Navy within the country's exclusive economic zone. We will continue the RORE mission to ensure the well-being of our Marines and sailors and to perform our obligations in the region. Finally, the world probably is expecting a better explanation from the China Coast Guard because right now they cannot just hide behind they cannot just hide their action behind the term necessary control, because their acts contradict what they are saying. Finally, the AFP extends its appreciation to the bravery and commitment of all those involved in the RORE mission. The Western Command, Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Naval Forces sent west of the Philippine Navy, the crew of the 2 supply vessels, and most especially to the ever-reliable Philippine Coast Guard for standing up against a much bigger and numerically stronger force to assert our sovereign rights and our jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. To those men, your action on that day, 5th of August 2023, was a defining moment. You have shown the world our firm resolve, not just to protect our territorial integrity, but the character and discipline as well to uphold and promote the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Aguilar. I will now give the floor to Commander J. Tariela, spokesperson of the PCG, Philippine Coast Guard, in the West Philippine Sea matter. He will speak and discuss the factual narrative of August 5, 2023, a Union Shoal incident from the perspective of the Coast Guard. Commodore Tariela, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Department of Foreign Affairs for hosting this press conference. Secondly, I would like to thank our media friends for coming here and joining us with this press conference. We recognize the important role of media in telling the world the factual narrative of what really happened with this resupply mission. The Philippine Coast Guard was tasked to provide security escort to the AFP chartered supply boats. Let me emphasize that the resupply mission is actually a mission carried out by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and the Philippine Coast Guard was only asked to provide security escort. The 2 boats that they use is the green hull, the Unaiza Maze, and the red hull. The Philippine Coast Guard provided 2 Coast Guard commissioned vessels, BRP Malapascua and BRP Cabra. As what was initially narrated by Colonel Midel, the Philippine Coast Guard vessels used Escoda Shoal as a rendezvous point for us to meet those chartered boats. BRP Malapascua and BRP Cabra are staying in Sabina Shoal to meet the resupply boats. And then as early as 6:22 p.m., a day before the resupply mission, we were able to monitor China Coast Guard 5304 already staying in that particular location and waiting for the resupply mission to be executed in Sabina Shoal. The following day, 050631, the following morning at 6:31 in the morning, we were able to monitor 2 PLA Navy vessels, PLA Navy 167 and PLA Navy 630. Those are the bound numbers of those PLA Navy vessels on that morning of August 5. The distance is 36.5 nautical miles east of Ayungin. In this particular slide, I'll be showing you how the China Coast Guard 5304, since the time we departed Sabina Shoal until such time we proceeded to going to Ayungin Shoal, they have started shadowing the Philippine Coast Guard vessel MRB 4409 and the Green Hull or the Unaiza May number 1. And then around 7:30 in the morning, there's another China Coast Guard that approached, which came from Ayungin Shoal. This is
ang liit ng barko ng Pilipinas compared dun sa barko ng mga Chinese.
China Coast Guard 5201.
Kita nyo? Parang bangka lang.
By 8:19, we were able to monitor 3 China Coast Guard China Coast
Ang
Guard
dami, oh. 1,
4203,
2,
China
3,
Coast Guard
4.
5201, and China Coast Guard 5402. The objective of all these 3 China Coast Guard vessels is to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from providing security escort to the Onaizame or the Green Hull, Onaizame number 1. And this is also the first time the China Coast Guard 5402 carried out a dangerous maneuver to block MRV 4409.
Parang blow by blow account ito. Oh. Kaya ko pinakita sa inyo.
Around 8:19, we can be able to see how China Coast Guard 5204 was able to separate the Green Hull supply boat from the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. The objective is to separate the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from those indigenous boats being used, so that they can be able to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard from providing escort to those supply boats. And in this photo, you can see how 5304, which is the larger Coast Guard vessel compared to the Philippine Coast Guard, to cut across between the Onaizame and the Philippine Coast Guard 54409. Around 8:19, additional China Coast Guard 4203 also conducted a dangerous maneuver to prevent 4402 from advancing its position going to Ayungin. 4402 is the one escorting.
Nakita niyo yung picture na yan? How dangerously close the 2 ships were? Magkakabanggaan kundi mahusay yung piloto ng China, ng Philippine Navy. Magkakabanggahan talaga. Ulitin natin. Hello, Beth Arola. Thank you for visiting the channel, the Pbbm channel.
The objective is to separate the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from those indigenous boats being used, so that they can be able to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard from providing escort to those supply boats. And in this photo, you can see how 5304, which is the larger Coast Guard vessel compared to the Philippine Coast Guard, to cut across between the Onaizame and the Philippine Coast Guard 54409. Around 8:19, additional China Coast Guard 4203 also conducted a dangerous maneuver to prevent 4402 from advancing its position going to Ayungin. 4402 is the one escorting the other supply boats, which is the Red Hull.
Pardon the word.
Around 8:40, this was also a photo shown by Colonel Aguilar a while ago. You can see how China Coast Guard carried out a very dangerous maneuver as if they're going.
Hindi ba ang intention ng Coast Guard nila ay to capsize our small Navy boat na parang bangkala? Mga walang hiya ito mga...
After we concluded most of the questions,
China Coast Guard 5402 carried out a dangerous maneuver to block MRV 4409.
Nuulit-ulit ko para ipakita ka sa inyo ang...
Around 8:19, we can be able to see how China Coast Guard 5304 was able to separate the Green Hull supply boat from the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. The objective is to separate the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from those indigenous boats being used, so that they can be able to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard from providing escort to those supply boats. And in this photo, you can see how 5304, which is the larger Coast Guard vessel compared to the Philippine Coast Guard, to cut across between the Onaizame and the Philippine Coast Guard 54409.
Only inches yata or feet.
Around 8:19, additional China Coast Guard 4203 also conducted a dangerous maneuver to prevent 4402 from advancing its position going to Ayungin. 4402 is the one escorting the other supply boats, which is the Red Hull. Around 8:40, this was also a photo shown by Colonel Aguilar a while ago. You can see how China Coast Guard carried out a very dangerous maneuver as if they're going to ram the supply boat from behind.
Eh, grabe. Mabuti nakita natin ang
Around
mga video
8:48 in
ito.
the morning, we were able to monitor another PLA Navy vessel, PLA Navy 630, with a distance of around 18 nautical miles from Ayungin. By 9:13 in the morning, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel had experienced this dangerous maneuver of China Coast Guard 5304.
Oh, nakatutok ang baril, nakikita nyo?
This is actually the second time that 5304 already carried out this dangerous maneuver. And this is actually the closest.
Ay, baril o camera?
4409, sir. This is the photo. This was China Coast Guard 5305 carrying out dangerous maneuver against the Philippine Coast Guard vessel 4402. So a while ago, it was 4409. Now it's 4402. The objective of all this dangerous maneuver, as I said, is to separate the Philippine Coast Guard vessel from the escorted indigenous boat.
Nagigigil si Duana. Nagigigil din ako eh.
In which by 9:44, they were successful in separating MRRB 4409
Oh, yun,
from the
yung water
Green Hull
cannon.
charter boat. That's why, as you can see, the indigenous boat appears to be on its own, no escort. Because during this time, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel is corralled by a lot of China Coast Guard vessels.
Sinuran daw. Surround.
By 9:51, almost the same time that they were using water cannon against the indigenous boat Green Hull or the Unaiza May number,
kita niyan?
the Unaiza May. That's also the same time that the Philippine Coast Guard was also experiencing water cannon from these two China Coast Guard vessels, China Coast Guard 4203 and China Coast Guard 5305.
Tama ka dyan. Calculate.
Around 10 a.m.,
Kaya
China Coast Guard
importante yung-
5305 again carried out another very dangerous maneuver. That the Coast Guard vessel 4402 has to order his stop his engine, otherwise he's going to
yun ang
ram the China Coast Guard 5305.
Oh, grabe. Oh, yun yung water cannon
China
na.
Coast Guard 5201 again took advantage of the Philippine Coast Guard being distant from that of indigenous boat. That's why they were able to successfully again use their water cannon against this indigenous boat. Around 10 in the morning, 13 nautical miles southeast of Ayungin, we were able to monitor 3 PLA Navy vessels. PLA Navy 527, 630, and 629. All of these PLA Navy vessels are just stationed on those areas, appearing to be waiting for instructions. Around 10:30 in the morning, China Coast Guard executed again another dangerous maneuver to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard vessels from attempting to get near the indigenous boats once again. While the two Philippine Coast Guard vessels were attempting to escape the ramming, the blocking, and the dangerous maneuver of the
Mahusay yung
Philippine Coast
mga
Guard
piloto
vessels,
ng
the China Coast
Philippine
Guard
Navy.
vessels. It's a good thing that still one of our supply boats was able to reach LS-57 around 11 o'clock in the morning. Around 12 o'clock of August 5, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel received a call from the other supply boats, the Red Hull supply boats, which were not able to enter the Ayungin Shoal. They requested, that vessel requested the Philippine Coast Guard vessel to attempt once again in entering the shoal. But
Bangkalan pala yung
unfortunately, since the China
Yung
Coast Guard
supply
also
boat,
tapped 2 Chinese maritime militia vessels, besides from the 6 China Coast Guard vessels, this indigenous boat was not able
Hello,
to
Ate
enter the
Mafe.
Ayungin Shoal.
Sana mapanood mo yung actual video, makikita mo ang
This is the
katarantaduhan
photo of the Chinese maritime militia,
ng mga
appearing
Chinese.
to be Chinese fishing vessel. But in this particular operation, we
Pardon
can actually conclude that this Chinese fishing vessel is not just merely fishing vessel, but a Chinese maritime militia taking orders from the Chinese Coast Guard to support their operations in blocking our supply. Around 1 p.m., the Philippine Coast Guard vessel for BRP Cabra is still trying to escape with China Coast Guard vessels. This vessel was surrounded by 4 China Coast Guard vessels during that time.
Apat kontra isa? Diyos ko.
When the indigenous boat has already completed its resupply, the first resupply boat that was able to enter, we escorted them proceeding back to Sabina Shoal. And we noted that from Ayungin, although there is lesser tension, the China Coast Guard allowed us to exit Ayungin Shoal. But we noted that this China Coast Guard vessel 3302 escorted us from Ayungin going to Sabina. In total, we noted that there are 6 China Coast Guard vessels that they use to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard in escorting the resupply of the armed forces of the Philippines. And they also use these 2 Chinese maritime militia vessels, 00304 and 001. So besides from the 3 PLA Navy vessels that we monitored within the vicinity of Ayungin Shoal, they used 6 China Coast Guard vessels and 2 Chinese maritime militia vessels. That ends my briefing for what happened during the last resupply. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you,
Kita niyo na,
Commander
global
Tabuada.
boa
And
account
now
ng
it's
Navy.
the turn of the DFA to deliver its statement. China Coast Guard, People's Liberation Army Navy, and the Chinese...
Magbasa muna tayo ng komentaryo, baka matamakan tayo. Si kapatid na Ronald Federico Fax Rimas, salamat sa pagbisita po. Pinati po ni President si Joanna Wilfred, si President Cartea Pontelo. Si Ronald, kapatid Ronald ay binatbati po si Joanna Wilfred at saka buong pamilya ng Jackferdz Vlog. Sabi ni Joanna kay done like po so thank you. Kayo ba nag-like na po kayo lahat? Sabi ni Kaloyal Beth Ariola, thank you again, Beth Ariola, for visiting again. You can rely on this channel na puro BBM na ang laman ng channel ko. So, if you are interested to know the latest sa kay PBM, stay tuned sa ating munting channel. Hi Beth Ariola, sabi ng presidente namin, si Carcela Fontello. Si Beth Ariola, magaling ang PCG, nakaiwas. Magaling ang piloto. They call it a pilot, yung nag-steer po ng barko. Si Joanna Wilfred, binati po si kapatid Ronald po. Grabe pala ang bastod nila sa ating bansa at sa Pbbm at mga marina natin. Nanggigigil po si Joanna Wilfred. Nakakagigil lang. Kaya nga, kailangan natin na i-modernize ang Coast Guard natin. Yan ang iniisip ng Presidente BBM. He is going to modernize the Philippine Navy because he knows the problem involved. Agree, Carclea, sabi ni Beth Ariola. Kawawa naman ang Coast Guard natin, sabi niya sa dagdag niya. Si Ate Mape ay bumisita sa ating channel. So, for those who have not yet subscribed kay Ate Mape, subscribe po naman kayo dyan kasi she's very supportive sa ating channel. Please lang po. Listening here, Tatay po. Kita mo, pinopromote kita aggressively, Ate Mafe. Kaso konti pa lang ang nanonood sa channel na ito. Sa replay, maraming manonood. Kaya kung yung mga manonood sa replay, huwag niyong kalimutan mag-subscribe kay Ate Mafe at saka lahat ng mga independent vloggers tulad ni Carclea also has a channel. Tatay, would the U.S. escorting Philippine boats be considered inflammatory to the Chinese or acceptable lang yun considering this latest incident? Yeah. Sila may kasalanan. They should know that they were at fault. Hindi, it's not an inflammatory kasi ang mutual defense agreement is any attack on any Philippine vessel. Inatake nila eh. So therefore, the mutual defense agreement or the mutual defense treaty is now activated. I don't know if hingi si President Bongbong Marcos na i-activate yung mutual defense agreement. So if ever it happens, kasi mayroon ng plano naman sila na mag-joint patrol. If that happens, who does China blame? They can blame only themselves because of their provocation na pilitan ng Pilipinas na magkakaroon ng joint patrol. Magandang tanong yan. Sa akin, I would like a joint patrol. Pakita na natin kasi na hindi tayo papayag na continuously tayong binubuli. Kita mo, pag binangga ng Philippine Navy ang Coast Guard nila, tayo pa ang mablame? Kasi tayo ang bumangga sa Navy ship nila? Mahusay lang talaga yung piloto ng Navy ship natin. Iniwas niya. Kasi ayaw ng Navy na mapagbibintangan ng China, tayo ang gumawa ng sakuna. These are provocations. And biro mo, 6 kontra 6 na malalaking ships ang ginamit China plus 2 militia ships, di 8 lahat kontra sa isang Philippine Coast Guard at saka yung bangka lang pala yung supply na magsusupply sa ating troops eh. Hindi pamalaki ang barko. Bangka lang, nakita nyo? Pihit na pinalulubog ng China yung resupply na bangka. Tinatawag kong bangka. Kita nyo naman, bangka talaga. Hindi sa pangmamaliit sa ating Navy. Siguro, if they were hoping, kasi bangka lang, kaya hindi sila pipigilan ng China. Kaso, walang hiya itong mga Chinese eh. Pardon the word. But I cannot find any other word to describe their latest behavior. Yeah. Hindi na inflammatory yun. Kasi sila ang gumawa ng kawalang yan. Bilang mo. I did thumbs up already, Tatay. Thank you, Ate Mafe. I appreciate it. Daniel Berry Sports Coach. Kung mahilig kayo sa sports, mag-subscribe kayo kay Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Magaling mag-navigate ang boat ang Coast Guard. Oh, kaya lang, no much, ang litit ng boat nga. Bangka nga lang eh. Yung malaking bangka. Hindi ko matatawag na Navy vessel yun. Bangka lang. Lit ng boat natin comparing them sa barko ng mga Chinese. Thanks po, Tatay, sabi ni Amerikano yata yan. President Cartaya. Si Daniel, kasi lahat ng content niya is American sports. Hindi ka niya maiintindihan. Good. Daniel, most of my viewers here are supporting you. Sabi ni Kate, I'm one of your supporters. Subscribe, Daniel, in case you don't understand Filipino. Pari tayo iniisip. Kadalasan pari tayo iniisip, Kate. Pinoprovoke ng mga Chinese para nga naman, they can blame our Coast Guard. Yeah, di ba sinabi ko? Tama. Tama ang pag-analyze mo, Joanna Wilfred. Na pinipilit nilang mabangga sila. Kasi kung napabangga sa gitna yung barko, parang tayo ang may kasalanan. Hindi sila bumangga. Binangga natin yung barko nila. Kaso, ang problema, sila ang humarang. Sabi nga niya, buti na lang. Sabi niya, mahusay ang captain ng ship at alam niya ang protocol. Otherwise, tayo na naman ang aggressor. Tama yung pang-analyze mo again, Traxibilia. Kaya bangus dito ang mga nanunood. Thanks po, Carlia Capio. Tatay Jackferdz, Daniel. Nag-iwan po ako ng bakas. Very good. You start, I'm glad that you're starting to realize that we should support each other who visit this channel. Only those who visit or who visit your individual channels. Don't mind those who do not visit anymore. You're just wasting your time. Yan ang advice ko. That, huwag kayong mag-unsubscribe. Baka gumanti sila sa inyo na mag-unsubscribe din. Okay. You just return their favor and kung nag-visit sila, make sure that you return the favor. You visit their channel. Sabi ni TechV, yan ang mga kaibigan ng mga pro-China. Oo nga eh. Kaya nga, no to China. Oh. Hindi naman, wag na. I know your sentiment, but I go with President Bongbong Marcos na we should maintain a friendly relationship with China. Kasi we need also China for our economic products. Or should I type in English here po, Jackferdz vlog? No. You cannot. Kasi most of these people are also Filipinos. Only when you're conversing with Banyaga, yeah, you prefer yung English. Pwedeng Tagalog. My paternal grandma was kind of mean. Now I think about it, I might have been because he was half Chinese. She was half Chinese. Yeah. Kalma lang tayo. Huwag tayong masyadong mapuot. That them. Babatikusin nila kung dapat, babatikusin natin sila kung dapat batikusin. Pero huwag panataliin yung puot. Be objective lang. Kasi pag ang puot ay pinanatili mo sa yung puso, clouded na po yung judgment mo. Kaya nga, magaling po si Pbbm kasi hindi niya pinapanatili ang puot sa kanyang puso sa pagdesisyon. Kaya maingat po siya. Hindi katulad, sinabi ko na nga, binati ko siya ni Antonio Carpio. Nagsasabi lang naman ng totoo si presidente natin. Okay, pagpatuloy na natin.
These maritime militia vessels took blocking and other aggressive maneuvers, including the use of a water cannon against the Philippine supply boats and Coast Guard vessels on a routine resupply mission to the BRP Sierra Madre on August 5 in an area approximately 2.9 nautical miles from Ayungin Shoal. The Philippines demands that China immediately stop its illegal activities in our maritime zones. The Department of Foreign Affairs is one with the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard in their pursuit of our shared mandate to protect and uphold our legal maritime entitlements. The DFA is making full use of our diplomatic processes and is exercising all possible action available to us, including the summoning of the Chinese ambassador over this incident. The resupply mission to and the upkeep of the BRP Sierra Madre are legitimate.
Pinatawag na yung ambassador. Binibigyan ng protest notes siya ambassador. Ang kataka-taka, while this event was ongoing, hindi sila makakontakt sa China. Purpose sigurong they blocked the call. Hindi makakontakt ang Foreign Affairs to speak to the responsible Chinese official with regards to the West Philippine Sea or South China Sea. So the line of communication was interrupted or was not responded to. Kasalanan ng Chinese yan.
Philippine government activities in our country's exclusive economic zone, which are all in accordance with international law, particularly UNCLOS. As a low tide elevation, Ayungin Shoal can neither be the subject of a sovereign claim, nor is it capable of appropriation under international law, a fact affirmed by the 2016 Arbitral Award. China cannot, therefore, lawfully exercise sovereignty over it. China's illegal exercise of maritime law enforcement powers, interference with a legitimate Philippine rotation and resupply mission, including its aggressive use of water cannon against our vessels, and any other activity that infringes upon our sovereign rights and jurisdiction over a human shoal are violations of international. Thank you. That ends the DFA statement. We will now proceed to the open forum. To allow many journalists to as many journalists to ask different questions, we will allow each.
Hindi ko na discuss yung nilagay ko notes, but self-explanatory yung mga notes ko dyan sa unang-una. Kung gusto niyo ng mas maliwanagan, makikita nyo sa notes ko sa unang section ng aking comment section.
Journalists, one question with one follow-up. Please go direct to your question, and then and doing so, before you start questioning, can you actually identify yourself and the media outfit that you belong to? Please, can we have the first question, please? Yes, Tristan.
Hi, good afternoon po. Ambassador Tess, maybe for the DFA. President Marcos earlier said that there's already a note verbal given to Chinese Ambassador Wang Xilian. So could you elaborate on whether we've already sent a note verbal or a diplomatic protest over this incident? Yes, ma'am. How was it?
Yes, a note verbal has actually been issued, and it was issued during the summon of the Chinese ambassador by Undersecretary Lazaro this morning. So in terms of statistics, just a while ago, I mentioned in our chat that as of 7 August 2023, we had a certain number. But so as of August 7 now, at 11:30 a.m., the Philippines has filed 445 diplomatic protests.
440 diplomatic protests. Tigil muna ako kasi may comment po si Ryan Blackfield na nakakatawa. So basahin natin ang mga komentaryo. At kay Ate Mavi, all done to you. Kalklaya, nag-subscribe na po si Ate Mavi kay President Kalklaya. Sabi naman ni Trek Sibilia, binabati ni Trek Sibilia si President Kalklaya. Sabi ni President Kalklaya, thanks Ate Mavi. Sabi ni Ryan Blackwell, kumusta? Kay Ronald, Kaloyal Beth, Ate Mavi, Daniel, mega love shout out. Si Kalklaya, binati po si Trixie, si Ate Mafe, binati po si Ryan. Si Ryan, done subscription, so na-subscribe na siya sa lahat. Sabi kasi ni Senate President Zubiri, sa dami ng note verbal na pinadala sa Chinese Embassy, pwede na daw mag-gift wrap ang buong China. Tatay, nakakatawa. Nandito na, yung magaling na, nasa kabilang panig, si Ruel. Tamtakia, better late than never show. Okay. Hi, Ruel, sabi ng presidente namin. Kuya Ruel, sabi niya, magkakakasi sila sa Team Lintek. Hi, Ruel, President Kalklaya at Team Mafia. Okay. Bago tayo matambakan, okay.
Since 2020. For 2023, we have filed 35 diplomatic protests. This includes the note verbal hand-delivered during the ambassador.
So, Ma'am, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique, si Yusek Lazaro po ang nag-handover nung
Yusek Lazaro, allow me to give more details about the summoning of the ambassador. Yusek Lazaro conveyed to the Chinese ambassador this morning the strong protest of the Philippine government on the blocking and water cannon operation by the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese maritime militia vessels against Philippine indigenous boats conducting regular rotation and resupply and humanitarian mission to provide food, fuel, and other basic necessities to the Philippine military personnel stationed on the BRP in Sierra Madre on Ayungin Shoal. The blocking and water cannoning incident against and around the Philippine vessels on August 5 lasted for over an hour. The Undersecretary reiterated to the Chinese side that the Ayungin Shoal is a low tide elevation that cannot be appropriated or subjected to sovereignty claims. The final and binding 12 July 2016 award in the South China Sea arbitration expressly stated that Ayungin Shoal is within the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf of the Philippines, over which the Philippines has sovereign rights and jurisdictions. The DFA further called China's attention that its actions are likewise contrary to China's flag state obligation under the 1972 International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, which requires states to take measures necessary to ensure safety at sea and prevent ship collisions. The CCG vessel's dangerous maneuvers restricted the Philippine vessel's navigational path, thereby increasing the risk of collision in violation of Rules 2, 7, and 8 of COLREGS. The DFA firmly asked China to, 1, direct its vessels to stop their illegal action against Philippine vessels and to stop interfering in legitimate Philippine activities. 2, comply with its obligation under international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS and the 2016 award and the South China Sea arbitration and the 1972 COLREGS, and adhere to its commitments under the DOC. During the summon, the Philippines, through the FAA, also expressed disappointment that the DFA was unable to reach its counterpart to the maritime communication mechanism for several hours while the incident was occurring, and expressed the hope that the Chinese side will reciprocate with the same sense of urgency the communication initiated by the Philippines, as has been demonstrated by the Philippines when receiving communications initiated by the Chinese side. At the same time, I'd also like to inform that as we summoned the ambassador, our ambassador in China, in Beijing, also issued or handed a protest note to the CN Foreign Ministry as of this morning. Next question, please. We'll go this side one. Celerina, please.
Sinasabi ko, nawala na ang communication.
Good afternoon po. Ma'am, with these recent incidents, or anyone could answer, with the continuous bullying of China against the Philippines and this recent incident, how is the relationship between the Philippines and China now?
Magandang tanong.
Okay. We value our relations with China, and we hope that they too value the relations with the Philippines. But clearly, this incident undermines efforts to strengthen mutual trust and confidence, a crucial element in friendly relations among states between our countries, and it does provide tension in our bilateral relations. As we repeatedly said, the rotation and resupply mission was a routine activity conducted by the PCG and the Philippine Navy within the Philippine EEZ,
Yeah,
in line
I'll
with
make you
international
moderator.
law, specifically UNCLOS and the Arbitral Award of 2016. UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award have made clear that the Philippines exercise sovereign rights and jurisdiction on Ayungin Shoal, a low tide elevation within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. China has no right or legal basis to prevent us from exercising such sovereign rights and jurisdiction.
Follow up, could you clarify this statement of the president earlier to prevent like possible misinterpretation. The President mentioned during the ambush interview this morning, ang syempre, ang posisyon, and I will quote, ang syempre, ang posisyon ng China, sinasabi nila, quote, open quote, kami ang may-ari nito kaya pinagtanggol namin. Tayo naman sinasabing hindi, kami ang may-ari nito, kaya pinagtatanggol namin. Kaya yun ang nagiging gray area ngayon sa pinag-uusapan. Do you agree with the President that there's a gray area on that? Considering that it involves the Ayungin Shoal, which is within REEZ? Anyone could answer.
No, it would be hard for us to offer our views on what the president said. No, I think it would be best if that question is answered by the office of the president.
Next question, this side, please. Yes, we'll do it this way, yeah? Okay.
Okay na, ayan. Zen Hernandez po, ABS-CBN. Ma'am, are we going to summon the Chinese ambassador so that we can discuss this further? And of course, I would like to relay what I think the Filipino public would be asking at this point. How significant is it for us to file these diplomatic protests despite the fact that, these incidents, keeps happening?
We already summoned, the department has summoned the ambassador this morning. And what I actually recounted was what happened during the summoning of the ambassador. And the ambassador was with us in the department. Our ambassador in Beijing also called on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to actually convey in strong terms our protests against what has happened in Ayungin Shoal. The value of a note verbal is in terms of correcting narratives and in terms of protesting. Some people would say, where does that result? But it's important for us to do so. It's important for the Philippines to continue to assert what is rightfully ours. To allow China to continue with its narrative will be contrary to what we are supposed to do or mandated to do. And the policy of this government is very clear. As they said, not 1 inch of our territory should actually be handed over to China.
I haven't. One question lang, ma'am. I just asked one question. The other question is for our gentleman here. Can we clarify this accusation coming from the China Coast Guard that said we are actually bringing construction materials to Ayungin? And maybe we can clarify as well if we will keep the BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal despite all these
Tama
incidents.
ka. Kay Katraya.
Just to address the question about the diplomatic protests, I think it is very important for the Philippines to continue filing these diplomatic protests, no matter what the reaction of China is. The diplomatic protests are for purposes of putting on record our continuing objection to what the
Magaling
Chinese are
sumugot
doing.
itong kon.
The moment we stop issuing these diplomatic protests, it can be construed by China and the international community as an abandonment of our position. So this government, in particular the Department of Foreign Affairs, will continue to file these diplomatic protests, even if it runs into the hundreds, because precisely by doing so, we are reaffirming our commitment to the Philippine position that the Ayungin Shoal and all other features which we occupy are part of the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. We exercise sovereign rights and jurisdiction over those features. As to the second question, sorry, can you repeat the question? Okay. When we do resupply missions, and I will ask our colleagues here to also add to this. No? When we do resupply missions, we are exercising our rights, no, under international law. Because as mentioned, we have a permanently stationed Philippine commissioned vessel, Navy vessel in Ayungin Shoal. Okay, so when we do supply, we provide them with what is necessary for the maintenance of the LS-57. So we provide food, we provide everything, provisions, no, irrespective of what China says. It is our right to bring whatever is necessary to maintain the to maintain the station and to ensure that our troops there are properly provisioned. So let me give the floor to the other members of the panel.
Based on the report provided to us, these are supplies that are needed by our people there to make sure that they have food to eat, water to drink, and other supplies needed.
Nag-iimbento mga Chinese
Yes, ma'am.
para
Cecil Morelli of the
mapagtakpan
French
ng
News Agency.
kanilang ginawa.
Sir, according to your account, that the Chinese have been turning the screw, so to speak. First, they shadow us, and then they hit us with water cannon. They try to ram us, and at one point, they used military-grade laser, as you described it last February. What is the end goal of the Chinese government on Ayungin Shoal and Sabina Shoal, do you think? And is there anything practically that we can do to stop them from achieving that? May I ask Commodore Tariela to answer first?
I'm sorry, sir, but those questions doesn't fall for the Philippine Coast Guard to respond. I think those questions are not for the Philippine Coast Guard to respond, ma'am.
May I ask the others?
Okay. I think that question is better directed to China. I cannot speak for China.
Yes, I echo the sentiment raised by Colonel Aguilar. I think the end goal of China is for China to actually explain. And for us, the Philippines, is to prepare for any eventuality.
Are we going to build there if we lose our nerve and abandon the outpost?
Okay. For the record, we will never abandon Ayungin Shoal. We are committed to Ayungin Shoal. In fact, no, if we're trying to determine although it's better for China to be the one answering this, but if we wish to speculate, no, they're probably looking for weaknesses in the Philippine position, or are trying to gauge our commitment to supply our troops in the shoal. And we are here precisely to reassure the Filipino people that, as directed by our president, we are consistent with the president's directive during the SON, that you will not lose an inch of our territory.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Question from our Zoom participants from Global Daily Mirror. Ambassador, the former President Duterte visited Beijing previously and had some discussions allegedly involving operational aspects of the Philippine military. Were there discussions regarding the events past and present in the disputed waters? Do we have any information on what was discussed and why such dangerous acts are still being done by the Chinese Coast Guard?
I'm not privy to the meeting in Beijing, so I have no information to share on that.
Ba't niya, mukha niya si Tina Monzon Palma nung tumunta si Tina Monzon Palma?
Ma'am, Joanna Balyaran from GG Press. Ma'am, we've been firing diplomatic protests against China. No? It's been over 400 note verbales and protests. So what's the next step for the Philippines, ma'am? What are the other forum or platforms are we going to use to, to ask China to cease and desist from what they're doing in the West Philippine Sea?
What is clear, Joanna, is that we will exhaust all fora and exhaust all mechanisms so that we can bring to fore the Philippine position in terms of what's happening in our waters. That's for sure. So, but in terms of diplomatic protest, that's one diplomatic action that's taken. A summoning is another diplomatic action that's taken. Issuing a démarche is really another action that will be taken. But each case will actually determine what course of action will be undertaken by the DFA. And we cannot actually speculate, but we will actually say and stress that the commitment of DFA is that we will, after an assessment of an incident, we will take appropriate action to actually protect and promote our interests.
Hello, Mara Cepeda from the Straits Times. A few days ago, China actually even offered to hold joint patrols in the West Philippine Sea to the military. How does this latest incident and their blatant disregard for our sovereignty play into the decision of the military and the Philippine government in general in considering the offer of China, which is something that's quite ridiculous given their actions there? Are we still going? Is it does this incident in a way affect? Is there a decision already? Will a joint patrol? Does a joint patrol with China even make sense in the West Philippine Sea?
It was just an informal discussion. I don't know if it's even worth to be discussed here. Second, we cannot make a decision on that issue. Third, I think you can ask the people, the Filipino people, on the reaction.
Hi, sirs. I'm Camila Lamia from the New York Times. For the gentleman here, I'd like to ask, when it comes to the ROR emissions, we're seeing more and more of Chinese vessels, Chinese maritime militia vessels. Are we planning to deploy more vessels, if that's even possible,
Magandang
or
question siya.
increase the frequency of our ROR in Ayungin Shoal specifically?
We have already increased the number of our assets in that area for the conduct of maritime patrols and, of course, to do ROR emissions. As to what we will do exactly, that we cannot tell you for security reasons.
Sir, ilang vessels na po yung dinagdag, and also maybe
Again,
the
that
WPS?
question, ma'am, I'm sorry, is I cannot answer because there are
Siyempre,
security
tanga
considerations.
naman yung tanong na yan. Military secret naman yun eh.
Hi, Sir. Sandra po, GMA7. So there are opinions that the Ayungin situation is already a blockade against the military. So what is your response to that, and what are we going to do? And also, does this already warrant any help or assistance from the U.S.?
Yan, ang tanong mo, Kaklaya.
Let me answer the first part of the question and let me refer to DFA on the second part of the question. I think the incidents at Ayungin Shoal last Saturday speaks for itself. No, the increased number of Coast Guard vessels, the movement in concert with the Chinese maritime militia, which effectively proves to the whole world that they are instruments of the Chinese Coast Guard or the Chinese Navy or the Chinese government. That these Chinese militia vessels are not disinterested participants or innocent individuals just who happen to be there. No, this was a concerted effort, as mentioned by Commodore Tariela, a concerted effort wherein our ships were effectively corralled. No, so this was like a David versus Goliath situation because there were only 2 Coast Guard vessels and 2 Philippine supply boats against 6 large Chinese Coast Guard vessels and 2 Chinese militia vessels and more People's Liberation Army naval vessels at near proximity to the area. So technically, this looks like a blockade of the Ayungin Shoal, okay? Because the facts on the ground, as can be seen by everyone through the videos and the photos that we have shown today, clearly showed the increased deployment of the Chinese Coast Guard vessels. I think the most number, tama ba, Commodore? The most number in recent memory.
Hi, Sir Ahmed.
Okay. As to the second question, may I turn over to the DFA?
Does this warrant already the any help or assistance from the U.S. under the U.S. RPUS Mutual Defense Treaty?
Well, the United States has actually publicly affirmed in its statement and in various statements and at the highest level that it has ironclad commitment to the defense of the Philippines pursuant to the Philippine-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty of 1951. And here we deal with the concept of what constitutes an armed attack in the Pacific. But there is no clear definition as to what defines public vessels in the MDT, and there are ongoing negotiations on it. In terms of your specific question, whether it warrants the invoking of the mutual defense, I think it's a bit early.
Oh, yun. It's a bit early. Kaya, early pa daw, Cleia. So I mistake. I admit my mistake.
Hi, Ambassador Daza, Sophia Cruz from CNA. Just to follow up Ms. Sandro's question as well. You mentioned earlier that there is no clear definition as to what defines a public vessel under the MDT. With the great detail that that NTF has also shared regarding the recent incident, are we moving towards perhaps a definition of what a public vessel would be and what might that look like, considering it was also mentioned that these were commissioned by the Philippine Navy, they were manned by officers of the Philippine Navy. So yeah, what is this incident?
So I admit my mistake. Ito, na it warrants na. So I was nagkamali ako. I admit it na. Pag nagkamali ako, President Cleia, na-admit ko. At tama yung Department of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman. It's a bit too early. Pero sa akin, sa pananaw, if ever, it is warranted. Hindi ako entirely wrong, pero I am partly wrong. So I'm sorry, I gave the wrong opinion. I am man enough to admit when I am wrong.
What impact does it have on the MDT, and kind of clarifying what constitutes us?
Thank you for that. The Philippines remains committed to the pursuit of an effective and a substantive code of conduct. China's
Code of
coercive
conduct,
actions, continuing coercive actions, a reflection of a dire need for us to actually set up rules that would guide our actions at sea and prevent tensions from escalating in the region.
Good afternoon, sirs and ma'am. Martin Salongdong from Manila Bulletin.
Ay, Maita.
Sir, this question is addressed to Colonel Aguilar and Commodore Tariela. Sirs, what's the status of our personnel? How is their morale, especially those on board the BRP Sierra Madre and those who experienced the incident?
We are always prepared for all eventualities, and therefore the morale remains high.
For the Philippine Coast Guard crew of BRP Malapascua and BRP Cabra, their morale remains high. You still have the commitment of the Philippine Coast Guard that despite of the danger, despite of dangerous maneuver that the China Coast Guard would always do every time that there's a resupply mission in Ayungin, the Philippine Coast Guard will still carry out the mission and support the armed forces of the Philippines.
We have time for at least two more questions. So if we can, yes, this side, and then yes. Can we give the floor to those who have not yet asked questions, if that's all right? So a gentleman in the red, please.
Question, Rainier from the Philippine Star, for Commodore Tariela. Curious lang, sir. Does the PCG have a water cannon capability? So maybe we can also fire back. And are you allowed to? Kasi they're also using it naman yata, di ba? On us. Can we also use it on them?
Kakataon question ng reporter. Ibig sabihin, gumanti daw tayo na i-water cannon din natin ang Chinese vehicles. Tingnan natin ang sagot ng Commodore.
Well, for your information, sir, the MRV vessels that came from Japan are also equipped with water cannon. But unlike the Chinese Coast Guard, we're not going to use that to drive away the China Coast Guard. we intend to use that in firefighting
Oh.
whenever there is a maritime accident at sea. That's the usage of our water cannon, sir.
Hello po. Hi. Hi po, spokes and our gentleman here. I'm John Garner from Tribune. A while ago, DG Malaya gave us the soundbite that we've been waiting for. Sabi niya, we will never, or the Philippines will never abandon the Ayungin Shoal. Given the current state of BRP Sierra Madre, we would like to know how the Philippines maintain its position in the Ayungin Shoal given the current state of the commissioned vessel there.
Again, the BRP Sierra Madre is a Philippine Navy commissioned vessel. It's an active Philippine Navy commissioned vessel. Therefore, we will continue to resupply.
Wala nang
We will do what is
magko-comment, ha?
necessary to provide supplies and provision for our troops
After
there.
this.
So as long as it takes.
Follow-up lang po. During the adoption of the Senate resolution, which urges the DFA to elevate the Chinese incursions in the West Philippine Sea to international, multilateral or international fora, senators mentioned that isang bagyo na lang daw, hindi na natin alam kung ano mangyayari doon sa BRP Sierra Madre. Again, paano po natin ma-maintain yung position natin doon? Thank you.
We will do what is necessary to make sure that it will continue to stand there.
One last question. This side. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Hello, Maribel.
BBC po. The China Coast Guard just released a statement po. One of the lines says, China urges the Philippines to tow away the grounded warship from Ren-Ai Reef and restore it to its original state. Do we have like a statement on this po? To tow away daw po.
They want us to operation.
Who is China Coast Guard to tell us what to do?
Magaling.
So, are we okay with one more question? Are we okay with one more question? Yes, one more question.
Magaling din dyan.
Can you tell us a bit of the history? How come? Why did you put the Sierra Madre on that reef, on that shoal, and why did you put it there?
I think I need to do a research on that, sir. I will I'll go back to you as soon as I have the information. Thank you.
1997,
1998. Closing, we'll give the floor now to ADG Malaya for his closing remarks.
Okay. In behalf of Secretary Eduardo M. Año, the Chair of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea, first I'd like to thank our colleagues, Yusek Lasa, of course, and our friends from the Department of Foreign Affairs for hosting this meeting, this press conference here, my colleagues from the Coast Guard and the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Department of National Defense, and of course the Presidential Communications Operations Office for their support to the NTFWPS. I'd also like to thank our colleagues from the media for your support and coverage of this incident. No? May request lang kami sa NTFWPS kasi kung minsan naririnig namin sa mga balita na parang in question pa rin yung ating pagmamay-ari sa mga features na clearly was already awarded to us by the 2016 arbitral ruling and the provisions of the UNCLOS. Kasi meron pang illegal. Wag na natin gamitin sana to our friends from the media. The legal position of the Philippines is very clear and is supported by many countries. No? So we ask the support of the media to please provide the correct narrative and not fall into the narrative of the Chinese government insofar as this issue is concerned. And likewise, let me just end this press conference by again commending the valiant men and women of our armed forces, in particular the Armed Forces Western Command, Naval Forces West, Philippine Navy, and of course the Philippine Coast Guard, for their daring, bravery, and commitment to duty, despite all odds and despite the increased tensions in the West Philippine Sea. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay. Hindi ko na madidiscuss yung mga notes ko doon sa I type. Pero doon sa mga nahuli, kasi more than 2 hours na po tayo, ay pwede niyong balikan po yung notes ko dyan sa first section ng comment section. Okay, let's read yung commentary nyo, and then sabi ko, I have Dr. Dentistry is asking me for a free banana. I don't know how to give a free banana. What I know is to give you a banana a subscription, I have already subscribed to your channel, and I am asking you, my viewers, to subscribe to your channel. So I'm not like the show ni Ma'am Lintik who gives free bananas. I don't know how. I'm not techie kasi. Hello, I am a dentist. I would like you to have a free tips about the health of your teeth. Make sure you visit my house. Okay. Also visit this house regularly and continue to inform the viewers about your channel. I have already sinabi ko na. Okay, thanks host. Okay. I hope si Ate Mapi is greeting everybody again. Sabi na Tixvilla, I have already connected to Dr. Dentistry with full support. I've watched several videos. Okay. There you go. Coming from family ng Jackferdz Vlogs, Dr. Dentistry. Sabi ng yung gusto ng san, go to see at magbakas ng masuklian ng maayos. Okay. Dr. Sir Amik already subscribed to channel Dr. Dentistry. Sabi ni Sir Amik, Bradwell, kumusta ka? Kumusta biyahe? Iingat lagi. Look after yourself. Si Maite Baisa, loyalista, hello, hola, Tatay Jack, sabi niya, thank you. Nakadikit din ako kay Beth, sabi ni President Calclea. Si Sir Amik, binabati po si Maite Baisa. Si Maite Baisa, binabati si President Calclea Pontello. Si President, binabati si Maite Baisa. Si Calclea, binabati si Paring Amik. Si Maite Baisa, binabati si Paring, nabasa ko na yan. Si Sir Amik, binabati si Calclea Pontello, my love, sabi niya. Lambingan na. Kala ko, di mo na ako love, Paring Amik, sabi naman ng President. Nakalimutan mo na ako. Hindi. Sabi na ni Sir Amik, hindi naman, Mare, hindi mangyayari yun. Okay. Sabi ko, hi Maite, TY for visiting. Tixvilla, mega love shout out po sa kay Maite Baisa. On and off, commenting lang nasa work kasi kayo, it's alright. Nantay ko lang kung mag-LS ka, Sir Amik. Sana matsempuhan ko. Maite Baisa gives a blue heart. Si Calclea Fontello, LOL. Okay, Paring Amik. Ogoy, na naginip ng ng gising. Water gun kaya. Ah, magandang tanong nung reporter na yun. Ini-expect niya na sasabihin ng film name gagamitin na. Pero hindi yun purpose ng water gun. Tama yung sagot ng Philippine Navy. Paano sila magpag-water? Ang liit-liit ng bangka. Hindi, yung maliit na bangka, walang water cannon. Yung malaking, yung vessel, mayroong water cannon. Mali ka naman doon, Texibilia. Yung bangka, wala. Yung vessel na mayroong galing Japan, mayroong water cannon po. Miss Marvel, mabutit nakaabot ka. You can peruse my typed research sa unang bahagi. Basically, nandun na dito yung discussion namin. Or if you want, you can view the entire session. Miguel Love Chato, maraming nagmamahal dito sa iyo, Maribel Sawala. Si Amik TV, nagbababay na si Sir Amik, nasa trabaho siya kasi and everyone. Agreement is just a piece of paper. It can change. It can be changed anytime by any sitting politician. Physical forces much better. Mas sigurado yun dahil pag sinalaki tayo, nandyan sila. Okay, you're right. Pero in the face of the overwhelming of forces of the enemy, isa lang barko natin sa walo. It is not prudent to go to war with them. Ryan Blackwell, Maribel Zabala, kita mo Maribel, maraming nagmamahal sa'yo. Ate Mafe, still listening here. Then si Maribel Zabala, greets everybody, hand pink waving daw, sabi niya. Amik, nice one, music Malayam, pinitikan din minsan ang MSM. Okay. Magaling napansin ko magaling sumagot si Undersec Malaya. Dapat siya parati ang spokesman ng Department of Foreign Affairs. Sabi ni Ruel, always use West Philippine Sea. Ginagamit ko yan. Diba? Wag South China Sea. Ginagamit ko yan kasi yun ang ginagamit ng Chinese. Pero pag on the side, I use always West Philippine Sea. Okay, so the last comment po. Pero Tatay Jack, ang pinatatama ng water is yung mali. Tama ka dyan. Kung counter-attack siya, hindi pwede. Okay, you're right there. Okay, tama yung analysis mo dyan. Thank you, William. Pero, our new boat with hose will use malabanan. Gusto mong labanan sila. Pero ang sabi ng Navy, hindi po ginagamit yan para water hose, para panlaban din. It's used for emergency purposes. Okay. Pia de Cuspel, you made it. Hello, good day. Sige. So, wala na po. I will end the broadcast now. Kasi baka may live broadcast si Banat Boy. Okay? Bye! Love you all. Kasi naman, ang sabi na counter-attack. Okay. You have the last word, Trixie. Bye! I love you all. Continue supporting each other. Yun lang panawagan ko.